Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk to you about Acceptance by VanderMeer, the final book in the Southern Reach / Area X trilogy. And it's the book in which we have to accept we're pretty much never going to understand what the hell is going on with Area X. So what's the point of this book? What's the story? So essentially, at the end of the previous book, Authority, the Southern Reach has collapsed and the Area X has expanded, and now Control and Ghostbird, the main characters from the first two books, find themselves within Area X with no supplies and no goal. So given this, they decide to follow in the footsteps of the biologists and go to Failure Island to see if, basically just to make some semblance of a human connection, find out what happened with the biologist, if she survived, that kind of thing. But when they get there, they're going to find more than they're willing to accept, basically. So yeah, I mentioned in my videos on Annihilation and Authority that, Jeff VanderMeer he has a lot of range. He has a lot of scope in which he writes and the different ways that he tells things. And this book is yet another shift. Like, each book so far has been a shift from the previous ones. And in this one, I said, I kind of have to double down on that statement at this point. Because in this one, we have like a multi-POV story that's split. Not only is it multi-POV, but it's split across 3 different timelines. So, and then in between all of that, there's some sequences, I guess you can see. Sequences of events that I can really only describe as like an acid trip or a fever dream of some kind. So, not only do we get POVs for pretty much every character who is functional and alive in Area X, but we also get 2 flashback POVs in terms of timeline, and through those POVs we find out more about different cast members within the history of Area X and how their stories played out or didn't play out, or essentially what happened with their thing. The reason why I phrase it like that is because there isn't necessarily closure. Like this entire series at this point, you have to face the fact that one of the key things about Area X is that you are facing the strange and the unknowable, and as a result of that, you will not necessarily get all the answers. You won't necessarily understand what's going on. Like, don't expect closure. Don't expect to even understand what the hell is going on by the end of this book. Just revel in the ride, basically. But yeah, so that's kind of how things progress over the course of this book. For me personally, the star of the show is just Area X itself. Like, the more we find out about this place, the less we understand, the more questions we have. You do start to understand how it affects people who enter it and the things that exist within it. And Jeff VanderMeer never once comes out and confirms that this is what happens. Instead, he infers, and then you see supposed proof of that inference. Everything is just kind of hinted at and assumed. Nothing is ever hardcore confirmed. Like, you essentially just get suppositions, and events seem to back up those suppositions, but you never get like hard confirmation on anything that you assume about Area X. So there's that. It's just true in this book. Like, even in this book that supposedly wraps up everything, you just get so much mystery and tension and uniqueness to everything that happens that, like I said, just enjoy the ride. You will get some of your questions answered, but like I said, it's almost as if every new question just leads to another question or another answer that you don't necessarily get. And at the same time, this is a story I feel it kind of carries a little more of an emotional weight than the previous two, because not only are these characters that you're more familiar with at this point, but you also it also kind of feels like you have more character, like more of a more human story to this to these events. So it does kind of pack a more of an emotional weight as you find out what happens to people, how it happens, and how their stories play out. Like it's not like super deep characterization as is pretty common in fiction these days, in genre fiction, but VanderMeer, he gives you enough that you empathize basically with the characters, and you're curious about where they go, and you care enough about them to see what happens. But by no means is this like a deep character study or that kind of thing. So if you're into character driven novels, these are not the books for you. Basically. What else can I say about this book? Towards the end, like as the weirdness ramps up, we get an ending that I'm not quite sure I'm satisfied with. Like we get some semblance of an explanation that once again isn't necessary. Like it isn't confirmed or denied. These are suppositions. These are assumptions, based on like the what the characters observe of the environment and what they assume. So it's an ending of a sort. It is closure of a sort. It's not necessarily the closure you want. And it's not necessarily closure at all, because they're like 10 years later he did write a fourth book, which is how I'm reading and going back over these 3 books at this point in time, because I do have an arc for that fourth book. But yeah, like all in all, I just have to chalk this up as it's just a fascinating read. Like the first time around, honestly, I didn't know what to make of this trilogy. I wouldn't call it a favorite by any means. I'm not even sure if I can say I enjoyed my experience the first time around, but clearly it did make an impression on me, because 10 years later when I read when I saw a new book was coming out, like I immediately decided I had to reread this trilogy, and I think overall I had a better experience this time around. Like I'd forgotten so much of the just so much of the nitty gritty of these stories that I felt practically like I read them again for the first time. There were some moments that ingrained themselves in me the first time I read them, that like I knew were coming up, I knew were going to happen, but still it like the real punch in these stories isn't necessarily in the events that happen, but just in the miasma, in the atmosphere that VanderMeer creates and the way that he does things. Like I appreciated all of that quite a bit more this time around, and like once again, like I'm still not sure I could call these like favorites, but they are really good stories. They are really good stories. I think I like what he did here. It's certainly among some of the more unique genre fiction I've read. Like that's not even up for discussion. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. I guess at this point I have to say it. I just accept it for what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about acceptance. Now I'm going to go on to reading the arc of the new book that's coming out, Absolution, and let's see. Like for many years, this was the finale that we got. Let's see how, if and how that changes with the release of this new book. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.